Just before we start, would you mind just telling everybody who is watching who you are and what it is that you do with the council?
Yes, certainly. My name's Andrew Proctor, Councillor Andrew Proctor. I'm the leader of Norfolk County Council.
Lovely. So I've got a few questions that have come in from some of our listeners, and really they just want to know kind of what it is that you guys have been doing during lockdown to help support Norfolk. And how kind of that's going to continue into the future. So the first one I've got is from Georgie Marriott, who's in Sheringham, and she asks, what measures are you going to put in place to help local Norfolk-based businesses to get back on their feet after this third lockdown?
I think where we start from on this is how much so far we've worked together across the county, both with the Local Enterprise Partnership, the County Council and the District Councils. First of all, utilising the grant money that's come in through government. So that's been a really, really good thing. District Councils have worked really hard on getting that out. The important thing is to have a plan. And there is an overall recovery plan, an economic recovery plan, which sits with the Local Enterprise Partnership. Having said that, the County Council and the District Councils are very much involved in delivering, let's say, the last part of that, liaising with local businesses, how they can take things forward. I think the most important thing now is what's going to happen about jobs. Now, there's talk about how many jobs might be lost once the furlough scheme ends. So I think it's important that we, as local authorities and our business colleagues, all get together to think, well, what do we do about job creation? If you think there's 30-odd thousand small businesses, and they are sometimes very small businesses in Norfolk, if each one of those was able through our work together to create just even one extra job, just think how powerful an impact that would be. So I think our two key motivations are really to support the industries that we have in Norfolk, tourism particularly, and also make sure our small businesses can continue to be successful in the future. And we have put a fair bit of money in already through the Norfolk Support Fund and also into tourism. So from that point of view, we do recognise where the impact on businesses has been and how we can help them in the future. So I think the overall message, pull together as we have done so far, make sure we have a joint purpose and support all the businesses. It's not going to happen overnight, but I'm sure we'll get it done as best we can.
Fantastic, thank you. So the next one is from Harry Harvey, who's in Downham Market. He's asked, what is the impact that COVID has had on Norfolk as a whole? Obviously, there's been so many people who we've lost, which is just every single person's a tragedy. But what wider impact has it had, and how long will these issues stay around for?
Well, it is true. Over the last year, Norfolk has not been anywhere near the place it's been in the past. People have suffered. There's been some serious illnesses and very, very sadly deaths. And my heart goes out to all the people who've been involved in that, whether people in their family have suffered through COVID or people have died. So it's a very sad situation. I think some of the things that we need to look at now is how things will start to improve. But there's probably three key elements of the impact on Norfolk. Well, probably four actually. One is on families, because that's been a difficult issue there, supporting families, and particularly if you live quite a way away. My daughters, for example, live in West Sussex, so that's 200 miles away. So over the last year, I've not really seen very much of them apart from our video calls. But that's an important issue of keeping in touch with family. I think the other concern that people have, well, what's the impact on people's mental health? Now, quite rightly, a lot has been said about this. I don't think anybody knows yet what the impact has been or will be, and that's not going to stop either. So something there, we need to recognise that and make sure we put in place assistance methods for everybody. From a business point of view, employment point of view, and particularly the hospitality industry, then we must recognise, which is probably part of my previous answer, about what needs to be done to take that forward as well. And don't forget also the impact on education for young people. However young the children are, I know for a fact with my own grandchildren how desperate, and their mother is as well, that they got back to school and to meet their friends and get on with their education in the way they want to. So there's all these things together. And I think perhaps the overriding part of this is that we need to make sure that we recognise all these issues, but we try and build people's confidence up again, and confidence to live in the way they used to live before. We're not going to get this back straight away, far from it, and some of the confidence will come from the vaccination programme as well. So confidence is a big word to try and deal with all the issues we've had thrown at us in the last year or so.
Okay, and you've obviously just mentioned about mental health, which is another area we wanted to touch on, because there have been so many stories, haven't there, of people who have been struggling, and obviously it's been a really hard time for everybody. What is the council doing to support people who do have mental health struggles and have struggled through this in the long term?
We have a duty in this respect to actually make sure that we can help everybody, and I think that a lot of this comes down to how we can understand, and I think that's the first thing, really understand what this impact has been. It's going to be different for some people compared with others, but that's not the answer. The answer really is how we can actually bring about the services that people want, whether it's let's say the medical services, but that's an NHS issue, not the county council issue. But more important, the support we put around people to think, well, you have gone through a tough time. How can we now help you get out the other side? And sometimes, again, perhaps it comes back to what I said earlier on about confidence. If we can get that confidence instilled in people again, that there is, first of all, people to help them, then they can start thinking, yes, we know there's people to help us. We can get in with that and do things together. It's a long, long job to do this. It's not going to happen overnight.
Okay, thank you. Next one is from Layla Jones, who's in Kings Lynn. She said that Norfolk was one of the last places in the country to get confirmed COVID cases last year. But obviously during the second wave, we have seen much higher figures than we did during the first. She's asking, how have places on the North Norfolk coast in particular had very few cases, while areas like Kings Lynn and Breckland have had much higher numbers?
I think that part of the answer to that is once COVID has got into the community, then it does spread, and spreads really rapidly. If you go back to where we were in January this year, beginning of January, I think Norfolk had about 370 odd cases per 100,000. The East of England figure at that time, I think, was about 650. Nationally, about 470. These are approximate figures. They're round about right. And roll that forward a month, and it was almost halved across the country. And that was 235, I think, something like that. And also, but Norfolk then was down to 236. So we're very much on the national average then. Looking at the beginning of this month, and we're right down to 39 per 100,000, compared with the national average of 70. Now, I know those are exact figures. I saw them a couple of days ago. So you can see how the whole thing has worked in the last year. But if we're looking at how we can stop the spread, first of all, in terms of those numbers, sometimes the numbers shoot up very quickly. There might be an outbreak at the care home, there might be an outbreak at a food factory, and obviously, and the Norwich prison one as well. So they sometimes distort the figures in a particular area. But the success really of keeping the cases down, and they have been kept down compared with other parts of the country and nationally, has been the communications programme. We have emphasised to people hands, face, space, and also isolate when they've had any contact with people who've got COVID or have got COVID themselves. So that's part of the work. The other part really has been the rapid response. When there have been areas that we know, certainly recently in the Diss and Roydon area, when there's a potential for the South African variant to be there, testing, we got in there pretty quickly. When there's been outbreaks in food factories, for example, we've got in there very quickly for testing and make sure that people know that they've got a problem, and also they can then start to isolate and get the people away from a community, away from an area where the COVID spreads. But ultimately, I think it's all how people have tried to work together to keep Norfolk a safe place for everybody, be they people who live here or people who visit the county.
And you've said, obviously, it's a big team effort and things. How do you think Norfolk has been as a whole for people following the rules and guidelines and staying at home and doing everything we can as individuals to stop the spread?
Well, generally, I think people have responded magnificently. There's no question of that. Individuals, businesses, communities have responded in that particular way and recognised the hands, face, space, isolate, but also the stay-at-home situation. It's no easy job. If you're used to going to work, if you're used to going out socialising, it's no easy job to be not locked up, but staying at home. But following the rules has helped, because if you look at those figures, the way they've dropped down since the beginning of the year, that 530 odd down to just 39 now, that's a big drop in just over 2 months. And that's almost certainly caused primarily by the lockdown. The vaccination program has had an impact, but I think people have recognised now that if you do follow the rules, things do happen from there, and good things happen from there as well.
Amazing, thank you very much. So the next one, I don't have a name for this one. What help has the council put out there for people who are now on the poverty line due to the pandemic, whether they've lost jobs, been on furlough? And have you supported kind of charities and groups such as food banks and night shelters that help these, or is the council running its own schemes to support these people?
Well, two things on that. First of all, we have put some grant money into the Norfolk Community Foundation. 2 lots of £100,000 have gone into them, and that way they've directed that money out to the charities and other bodies they work with. So that's a big investment into the community. From the district council's point of view, they've all got discretionary grant money they've used to help people. And from the Norfolk County Council point of view, we have the Norfolk Assistance Scheme, and that's actually been running since 2013. So notwithstanding the current pandemic situation, that's been running for a while. But the difference, we put a huge amount of extra money into that to make sure that people coming to us in the situation, the difficult situation with COVID, whatever it may be, if it's to do with rent arrears, if it's to do with food requirements, we can actually work with them to try and resolve that. We've done a lot of work in distributing food parcels out into the communities, and we also with the laptop schemes for children as well. So there's a huge amount of work that's been done, and I think this goes down very much again to the collective effort across Norfolk to get this done.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. So our next one is from Wayne Bond, who is from Docking. And he said it was announced last month that council tax will be going up by 3.99%. Do you think this is the right thing to do? And is there help for people who have lost their jobs and who are struggling?
I think from the council's point of view, we're in a very difficult position as far as our overall finances go. It is challenging, to say the least. Our cost pressures have gone up quite considerably. The demographics of Norfolk have changed as well, which means that we're in a situation where we've got to find money to keep the services we want going in the way that people want them. So in terms of that 3.99%, that is broken up between 1.99% for general council tax and 2% for an adult social care precept. Now, we could have levied 3%, but we didn't. So we've kept that at least down to the 2%. So that money is then ring-fenced rather, for adult social care. I think the other point to bear in mind in this, we did actually consult people as part of our budget setting proposals, and the balance of opinion was in favour of that level of increase, recognising the pressures we're under. I think also from the overall Norfolk County Council budget point of view, you're looking at what, £440 million net budget, £1.4 billion of gross budget, which is an investment in Norfolk that we have every year. In terms of support, there are council tax support schemes run by the district councils, so that helps people in that respect. But I think we're in a situation where we want to continue to invest in all the services we have for vulnerable people into our communities. And it's a situation where, well, if we're going to think about the longer term, we couldn't be in a situation where we didn't put the council tax up. I appreciate for some people that is a difficult call, but we've got to make that, we had to make that difficult call in these current circumstances.
Okay, and is there any support for people who have lost their jobs? Are there going to kind of be any relief programs or anything?
Well, the council tax support schemes are run by the district councils, so that exists already. and any other schemes that I've talked about already, the Norfolk Assistance Scheme and other schemes that are run across the county.
Perfect, thank you very much. So I know you've touched on the issue of schools. We've got a question directly about schools, which is from Paula Yates, who's in Swaffham, and she says she's been shielding for around a year with all of this, but her daughter is now back at school. What work is Norfolk County Council doing to ensure our children are being kept safe and don't get the virus and then bring it home?
Well, part of that revolves around the testing of all the children in the schools. A couple of times a week they've got to do the testing. I know my daughter with her children, she makes them do the tests, definitely so, but she works in the NHS, so she's already in the situation where she does a couple of days a week test herself anyhow. But I think the most important thing is the testing, the safer regime in the schools, the way they have to wear face coverings, the classroom bubbles, and limit mixing as much as possible, ventilation as well. So it's really about keeping people as safe as you possibly can in the environment they're in, so there's less risk of taking any infections back home. But again, let's be fair about what schools have done over a very, very difficult period. They haven't shut. They have, not all the pupils have been there, but all the schools have been open, or most of the schools have been open in this time, but for children of key workers and also vulnerable children as well. So all the way through the pandemic so far, and it hasn't ended yet, has it? The schools have done a really, really good job, and we've supported the schools as best we can. Some of the decisions that schools have made have been their decisions, but we've supported, from the County Council point of view, we've supported schools in what they've decided to do, and that particularly revolves around testing, how we've actually helped them set up the programmes and work with them.
Fantastic to hear. So the next one, so this pandemic has obviously proven that there are things that can be done to help rough sleepers on the streets. This is something that's been going on nationwide and in Norfolk, where people have been taken off the streets. Are there any long-term plans or discussions being made at the council to make sure we don't end up back where we were and that we can still continue to support people who are on the streets?
Well, that's been very much a part of the partnership effort with the district councils as well, because everybody's seen this and thought, well, we've actually done a really good job. I commend all my district council colleagues on this, because they're the people in the front line of this, and they've done extremely well. I think the most important thing now is how can we keep this going? And there is a common desire across the county and probably across the country as well to make sure this sort of work does continue, and that we do reduce the number of people who are rough sleeping on the streets as much as possible. And it's a big piece of work, and we'll do our best to continue doing that.
Great to hear. And so the next one is kind of more of a thing once we've left this lockdown, once we've kind of got out of it. What are the plans the County Council has in place to help people to return to a more normal life? Obviously, I know that's quite an encompassing one and brings in many different factors, but is there anything in particular that the council is doing to help people kind of return to normal as much as we can?
I suppose it's this word normal, will there ever be a normal? But there will be a normal, of course there will be. So it's really making sure that we get to a situation we recognise that. I think there's probably three things around this. One is how we can support our businesses. Now, if you look at what local businesses have done, shop local, that's really been a good thing all the way through this. So first thing is really about how we can help businesses, particularly the hospitality industry as well, tourism, which is important to Norfolk, make sure they get back on their feet. Secondly is around the services that we provide. We've kept a lot of the services going, the online libraries, adult education online as well. So technology has played a really, really big part in how everybody's responded in that way as well. And I think that the next stage really is how we then as a council make sure that we get back to normal as well, because all our staff, highly commended in what they've done. All our staff have done different things over the last year or so, but we've got big plans for Norfolk. I mentioned already the investment we have through our budget. We were already started looking at the big economic development opportunities across the county. The last cabinet meeting last week, we talked about the operations and maintenance base at Great Yarmouth, which is what, £18 million investment in there, and the West Winch housing access road as well, which will help the new housing in that area. So plans are there, ready to come forward, and we're ready to take up the challenge of getting things back to normal as much as we possibly can.
Fantastic. Well, that's all the questions I've got for you. Just before I do let you go, is there anything that you would like to say to any of our listeners? Well, and anything really about what they can do to help during this time?
Well, I think the most important thing is how well Norfolk as individuals who live in Norfolk and our communities have actually responded over the last year or so. And COVID is still with us, unfortunately, and it will be with us for some time to come. But I think it's demonstrated the community spirit across Norfolk. It's also demonstrated how hard the public bodies have worked together across the county, the district councils, the county council, and how well the NHS has worked. You know, to be fair, there's a huge pressure on them, and how everybody from that point of view has actually worked together. So my sort of overall thought is, we should be extremely proud of what Norfolk has done. It's been a very, very difficult year and still continue. It's still a very difficult time for everybody, but let's look back and think, yeah, we did pretty well on that. So let's continue that community spirit for the future.